Hello and welcome. In this episode, I'm going to share Sasquatch encounters. These stories include a man who heard something scream outside his home, a man who saw a monstrous figure walking across his neighbor's property, two friends who had a terrifying experience while walking in the woods one night, and a man who heard a loud knock outside his sister's home. But first, we start with a story from a woman who heard a roar in a state park. Before we get started, I just want to say that a lot of people turn to posting their stories online because they feel like they can't tell anyone and would be seen as crazy if they did. Most people who experience these beings are traumatized and feel the need to unburden themselves or just have someone who will believe them listen to their story. If you've had an encounter and you feel like you can't tell anyone for fear of being made fun of, ridiculed, called a liar, or any other reason, email me. You'll find a sympathetic ear here who will believe you. I do want to mention that just because you email me your story, it doesn't mean it will end up in an episode on my channel. Your story can stay between me and you if that's what you want. Also, if you've had an encounter and you'd like to come on an episode and tell your story, email me. My email is wolfwhocriedcryptid@gmail.com. Alright, let's get into today's stories. The first story of this episode comes to us from a poster who had a terrifying experience while camping one night. Her story takes place in 2014 when she was in the Tobyhanna State Park in Pennsylvania. While in the park, she had stumbled upon a secluded grove she says felt like another world. It was so beautiful, according to her, that it felt surreal. Then everything stopped. Silence, absolute and unnatural, filled the air. Before she could process the shift, a sound tore through the stillness. Something between a howl and a roar, described by her, and possibly loud and very close. The deafening force hit her and she didn't just hear it but felt it too. It overcame her in a way that she couldn't even tell which direction it came from. Her instinct seized control, commanding her to run, in no specific direction, just to get out of there. About 30 minutes later, she ended up near the campground restrooms, composed herself, and returned to her car. She never saw what made that sound, but even now she still can't fathom anything on Earth capable of producing it. In response to a comment, she gives more details about her encounter, saying she was camping in the remote creek bottom near the Wabash River. She first thought it could have been a bobcat or maybe even a cougar. But as it deepened, becoming extremely low and guttural, she knew it was far larger than anything she had imagined. She had never heard anything like it before, and even now, more than 20 years later, she has never heard anything like it. I'm pretty sure most people would have had the same reaction the original poster did here, taking off running after hearing something like that roaring at you from the darkness. I can't really blame her for running, but I will say that she's lucky this thing, whatever it was, didn't chase her. In a lot of stories, Sasquatches try to scare people to seemingly get them out of their territory. That could be what was going on here and why it didn't chase her. Being chased does happen in a lot of stories I hear. I'm just glad she got out of there safely. What do you think about this story? What would you do if you heard a roar like that in the woods at night? The next story comes from a poster who heard a scream several times over a week while in the supposed safety of his own home. He first heard the scream while sitting in his living room, and as I mentioned in the intro, it didn't stop there. He heard it several more times that week, which prompted him to pack up his pets and everything he owned and move. He never went back to that house and later sold it. Before he left his home, he says there was a stench in his backyard and that he found massive footprints in the snow right in front of his windows. His yard birds also vanished. And then came the scream. It wasn't that of a bobcat, he says, nor the guttural call of a cougar. He knew those sounds well. He says this was something else entirely, and that it, in his words, hit like a freight train ripping through his chest. It was impossibly loud. He says he didn't find out what it was until about 10 years after it happened. He believes it was a Sasquatch. When he was asked if he has ever reached out to the new owners to see if they have had any experiences there, he said no. but he did say he once worked with a guy who swore up and down that he had seen it. It happened when the guy was in high school. He claimed he saw a gorilla running across a meadow that was surrounded by woods. He had never mentioned the Sasquatch to his coworker either, and the man always pointed out the stretch of land, saying that's where he saw the quote, gorilla running on two legs. Just like in the first story, I can see why the original poster moved after he heard the creature scream not just once, but multiple times outside his home over the course of a week. I'm sure he was worried for not just his safety, but that of his pets as well. No one can blame him there. The way he describes what he heard as a scream rather than a roar or a howl makes me think this was a Sasquatch. Another thing that makes me think it was a Sasquatch are the birds going missing. For some reason, Sasquatches, when gifting, usually leave dead birds somewhere for the person to find. Now I know this doesn't happen in this story, but the birds disappearing makes me think Sasquatch because of that. Then there's the stench he said he smelled in his backyard. This is common in Sasquatch encounters as well. What creeps me out the most, though, about this one is that he found footprints outside of his window. That means this thing was trying to look in at him, or it was looking at him while it was screaming. I mentioned them being territorial in the first story, and that very well could be the case here too. It could have been trying to get him to leave and was successful. I would be interested to know if the people who moved in after him started encountering the same activity he did. But I guess we'll never know. What do you think about this story? Would you move if something screamed outside your house? The next story comes from a user who lives in the Sierra Nevada foothills in California. If you aren't familiar with the Sierra sounds, they are recordings of Sasquatch sounds from the 1970s. They are the most famous and clearest recording of Sasquatch sounds and/or communication. They were recorded in the Sierra Nevada mountains where this poster lives. He says his home is surrounded by 7 acres of wild dense forest. A vast pond sat half a mile from his house, tucked into a neighboring property that had been abandoned for years after the elderly woman who lived there moved away, unable to maintain it after losing her husband. 3 years before posting his story online, just before sunset, he was working in his side yard when his gaze drifted toward the vacant house, about 100 to 130 yards away. And that's when he saw it. A towering figure, solid black from head to toe, striding downhill toward the pond. His first instinct was to rationalize it. Maybe it was just a person carrying something. But something was wrong. The arms were unnaturally long, its movements too swift. And the temperature that day was very hot, so no reasonable person would have been dressed in an all-black suit wandering an empty property with no vehicle in sight, heading straight into the dense forest. He had called the woman who had lived there, now staying with her family in another city, and asked if anyone was supposed to be on her land. She told him no. After that day, he started digging into Sasquatch sightings, reading stories, and comparing accounts. Now, he is a believer. He also adds that black bears roam the area, occasionally tipping over his trash cans. But whatever he saw that evening did not move like a bear. It walked like something else. Being that he lives in a densely wooded, remote location, I don't doubt this sighting. A deserted property is a perfect place for a Sasquatch, too. Plus, this takes place in the Sierra Nevada mountain range, which, as I mentioned in the intro, is known for Sasquatch activity. This one seems pretty cut and dry for me. What do you think about this one? Do you think he saw a Sasquatch that day? The next story comes from a user who had a scary encounter while walking in the woods with his friend one night. The original poster and his friend were walking along a trail, completely shrouded in the darkness of a moonless night. The woods had always been second nature to them. They knew them like the backs of their hands, according to him. But that evening, something shattered the quiet. Maybe 10 or 15 yards, the brush parted forcefully as if something was pushing its way through. They both froze. His mind scrambled for an explanation, but he had no idea what could be trudging through the brush like that, especially in the pitch black that late at night. Then it passed by them, unnervingly close, no more than 5 yards away. The way it moved, the rhythm of its gait stayed with him. He says he'll never forget the way it walked. And then, when it was right beside them, it stepped on a branch. Not a twig, not a stick, but something thick enough that when it snapped, it echoed like a log being split. And just as suddenly as it arrived, it was gone. He says the whole ordeal was nerve-wracking to say the least. Fear had already taken hold before the branch broke, but when it did, he felt it reverberate through him. It was an experience he remembers vividly to this day. The last thing I'd want to hear while walking in the woods at night would be something large walking in the trees nearby. Not that I'd be walking in the woods at night. I've heard way too many cryptid stories like this one and others where the creatures act aggressively. He doesn't say what this thing looked like, but he did post it alongside other Sasquatch encounters saying he had seen one, so one can only conclude that's what it was. I'm sure seeing something that isn't supposed to exist would leave a lasting impression and would be an experience he would never forget. What do you think about this story? And what would you do if you were in the woods at night and something like that walked past you? The final story of this episode comes to us from a user who heard something bizarre while outside one night. His story takes place in late September of 2023 in Massachusetts. He was staying with his sister, and her home was near a swamp and bordered a state park. His dog, usually eager to go out, refused to go outside with him, something so unlike him that it set off a red flag. Brushing it off, he went outside alone for a smoke. That's when it happened. A knock, sharp, unmistakable, like a wooden baseball bat striking solid timber, according to him. His brain processed it slowly. That sounds like a knock. Then, almost instantly, more excitedly, that sounds like a knock. When his sister returned home, he told her what happened, only for her to reveal an eerie experience of her own. Just a few nights earlier, while stargazing, she caught the scent of something foul, heavy, and rancid. She also heard a growl that reverberated through her bones. He planned to go back the following September to search for footprints and chasing answers. He also shares a theory about the knocking sound that the more he thought about it, the more convinced he became that the knock wasn't wood against wood, it was vocal. And at 10:30 at night, far away from any sports fields or human activity, it was very loud. This isn't the first time I've heard the theory that the knock sounds produced by Sasquatches are vocal and not them physically knocking on trees. It's an interesting one, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was true. There have been so many Sasquatch encounters with knocks that it is widely known it is one of the most common ways they communicate. The other is whooping, which is also widely known. The fact that his sister smelled something rancid while outside at night does point to it being something hanging around her house. I'd be careful if I were her, especially if she has pets. Speaking of pets, the original poster's dog refusing to go out, though he loves doing so, is another sign something was out there. But it does definitely sound like a Sasquatch to me. I've often said that if you're outdoors with your pets, that you should definitely pay attention if they start acting strangely or out of character for them. It's just like when I say we should listen to our gut feelings. Animals know that things are out there even when we don't, and they can sense the presence of something such as this. Luckily though, the original poster just stepped outside for a smoke and it doesn't sound like he went too far from the house. What do you think about this one? What would you do if you heard a knock like that while outside at night? And that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed these stories. If you'd like to hear more stories like these and other types of cryptids, make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you want to send me your story, I'd love to read it. My email is wolfwhocriedcryptid@gmail.com. I will also put my email in the description below. With your permission, I may want to use your story in an episode. Even if you'd prefer I didn't share your story on my channel and just want someone to listen, email me. We can privately talk about your encounter. Also, if you'd like to come on an episode and tell your own story, email me. Please remember to keep it civil in the comment section. No one deserves to be ridiculed whether they believe or not. Thank you for listening. I'll catch you at the next episode.